A deadly python was crushing this girl on a Colorado highway. Then a Hell's Angel and his crew saw her. The day was bright and warm, the kind of Colorado afternoon that made you forget your troubles. But Jack Grizzly Malone felt every one of his 45 years pressing down on him like a heavy coat. He rode at the front of the pack, his salt and pepper beard whipping in the wind. His leather vest was worn soft with age, covered in patches that told stories he rarely shared. Behind him, a dozen brothers followed in a loose V formation. Their engines rumbled in a low, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. They were coming home from a funeral. Another brother gone. Another chair empty at the clubhouse. Grizzly's eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead. The highway stretched out flat and dry, cutting through land that had not seen rain in weeks. Dust devils danced in the distance. The sun beat down hard, and the heat shimmered off the asphalt in wavy lines. He thought about the man they had buried. Tommy T-Bone Rodriguez. A good man. A loyal brother. He had died the way many of them did, too fast and too young. The service had been short. The tears had been few. Bikers did not cry. They just rode. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now back to the story, but Grizzly felt the weight in his chest. It had been there for years, ever since he had walked away from a woman he loved. He had told himself it was for the best. He had told himself he was not the kind of man who could settle down. He had told himself a lot of things. Now, riding down this empty road, he wondered if he would ever find peace. He wondered if he deserved to. The road curved ahead, bending around a low hill covered in scrub brush. Grizzly eased off the throttle, letting the bike slow just a little. He liked this stretch. It was quiet. It gave him room to think. Then, he heard it. A scream. It cut through the rumble of the engines like a knife, high and sharp and full of terror. Grizzly's hands tightened on the handlebars. He looked ahead, past the curve, and his heart stopped. There was a girl on the shoulder of the road. She was young, maybe 16 or 17. Her hair was a mess of dark tangles, and her clothes were dirty, like she had been running for a long time. She was on her knees, her back arched, her mouth open in another scream. And wrapped around her torso was a snake. Not a small snake. Not a garden snake. This was a python, thick as a man's thigh, its scales gleaming in the bright sun. It coiled around her chest and waist, squeezing tight. The girl's face was red, her eyes wide with panic. Grizzly did not think. He did not plan. He just acted. He slammed on the brakes, the rear wheel skidding and kicking up dust. Behind him, the rest of the crew did the same. Tires screeched, engines coughed, helmets turned. Move. Grizzly shouted, his voice rough and loud. He threw his leg over the bike and ran. His boots pounded on the hot asphalt. The girl was maybe 30 yards ahead, and every second felt like an hour. The python's coils tightened. The girl let out a choked cry, her hands clawing at the snake's body. She was losing air. She was losing strength. Grizzly reached her first. He dropped to his knees and grabbed the snake with both hands. The muscles in his arms bulged as he pulled. The python was strong, impossibly strong, but Grizzly was stronger. He had spent his life fighting. He had spent his life surviving. Get over here, he yelled to his brothers. They came fast. Big hands joined his. Rough voices shouted over each other. Together, they pried the snake's coils loose, inch by inch. The python hissed, its tongue flicking out. but it did not strike. It seemed almost confused, like it did not want to hurt the girl. Finally, the last coil slipped free. The python slid off her body and slithered into the brush by the side of the road. It paused for a moment, looking back with dark, unblinking eyes. Then it was gone. The girl gasped, sucking in air in great, ragged breaths. She fell forward, and Grizzly caught her. She was shaking, her whole body trembling like a leaf in a storm. "It's okay," he said, his voice softer now. "You're safe. We got you." But the girl did not relax. She looked up at him, and her eyes were not filled with relief. They were filled with fear. Real fear. The kind that did not come from a snake. "They're coming," she whispered. "They're still coming. Let me carefully plan out this chapter based on the instructions." The starting scene needs, Grizzly and his crew rush toward the girl, shouting, trying to distract the huge snake. The python tightens its grip, and the girl is turning blue. Grizzly grabs the snake's head, while his men pry the coils loose. They work together. Using their bare hands and a crowbar from a saddlebag, finally, the snake releases the girl, and she collapses to the ground. Gasping for air, the snake slithers away a few feet. Watching them with calm eyes, the ending scene needs. As the girl catches her breath, she bursts into tears. Not with relief, but with frustration. Grizzly asks if she's okay. And she sobs. "Why did you stop him? He was saving me." The crew exchanges confused glances, and they see two men lying prone in the ditch, one unconscious, one gone. I need to write this in the style described. Accessible, heartwarming, inspirational, but also tense in this action scene. I need to use simple vocabulary, short, impactful sentences mixed with longer ones, and never use em-dashes or hyphens. Let me write this chapter now. I'll continue from where the last part ended, with the girl saying, "They're coming. They're still coming." I need to start with the crew rushing toward the girl, shouting to distract the snake. The snake should tighten its grip again. The girl turns blue. Grizzly grabs the snake's head. The men pry the coils. They use a crowbar from a saddlebag. The snake releases her. She collapses. The snake watches from a few feet away. Then the ending beat, she bursts into tears with frustration, not relief. She says, "Why did you stop him? He was saving me." The crew exchanges confused looks. They see two men in the ditch, one unconscious, one gone. Let me write this out carefully. The girl's words hung in the air like a warning bell. Grizzly looked past her, down the empty stretch of highway, and saw nothing but heat waves and dust. But he knew that kind of fear. He had seen it before, in the eyes of men who had stared death in the face. "Petey," he barked. "Get over here." Petey, a wiry man with a patch on his vest that read Sparks, ran over. He carried a long metal crowbar that he had pulled from his saddlebag. His eyes were wide as he looked at the spot where the snake had disappeared into the brush. "Where'd it go?" Petey asked. "Forget the snake," Grizzly said. "We need to move." Now, but before anyone could act, the python reappeared. It came out of the brush like a dark green shadow, moving fast and silent. Its head rose up, swaying slightly, its tongue tasting the air. Its eyes were calm, almost patient. It did not look angry. It looked like it was waiting. The girl screamed again, a raw and desperate sound that tore through Grizzly's chest. He looked at her face and saw the color draining from her skin. Her lips were turning blue. "She can't breathe." One of the men shouted. Grizzly made a split-second decision. He dove forward, and grabbed the snake's head with both hands. The python was strong, but Grizzly held on, pressing his thumbs into the space behind its jaws. He had seen men handle snakes before. He had never done it himself, but he knew the basics. "Pry it off her," he yelled. The crew sprang into action. 2 men grabbed the coil around her chest and pulled. Another wedged the crowbar between the snake's body and the girl's ribs, using it as a lever. They grunted and strained, their muscles tight, their faces red from the effort. "Pull," Grizzly shouted. The snake hissed, its body writhing. But the men did not let go. They pulled harder, and slowly, inch by inch, the coil began to loosen. "Almost there," Petey said through gritted teeth. With one final heave, the snake's body came free. It slid off the girl like a rope being unwound, and she collapsed to the ground in a heap. Her chest heaved as she sucked in air, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The python slithered away a few feet and stopped. It turned its head, watching them with those calm, dark eyes. It did not strike. It did not hiss. It just watched. Grizzly released the snake's head and stepped back. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. He looked down at the girl, who was now on her hands and knees, coughing and sputtering. "You're okay," he said, his voice gentle. "You're safe now." But the girl did not look at him. She stayed on the ground, her head hanging low, her shoulders shaking. When she finally looked up, her face was streaked with tears. But these were not tears of relief. They were tears of anger. "Why did you stop him?" She sobbed. "Why did you stop him?" "He was saving me." Grizzly blinked. He looked around at his crew, who exchanged confused glances. Nobody knew what to say. "Saving you?" Grizzly repeated. "That snake was squeezing the life out of you." "No," the girl said, shaking her head. She pointed a trembling finger toward the ditch on the other side of the road. Then, Grizzly turned and looked where she was pointing. And then he saw them. 2 men lay in the ditch. One was sprawled out, completely still, his arms twisted at odd angles. His chest did not rise. He was not moving. The other spot was empty, just a trampled patch of weeds where a second man must have been. "They chased me," the girl said, her voice cracking. "They had guns. Slither took one of them down. He was protecting me. And then you showed up and pulled him off." Grizzly stared at the man in the ditch. Then he looked back at the python, still watching from the brush. "Slither?" he said. The girl nodded. "He's my best friend. He's all I have left." The girl's hands shook as she pushed herself to her feet. She was small, with a thin frame and dirt smudged across her cheek. Her eyes were red from crying, but there was a fire in them. Grizzly had seen that look before. It was the look of someone who had been pushed too far. "He's my pet," she said, pointing to the python. The snake had slithered back to her side and now coiled itself in a loose loop beside her feet. It moved its head gently, as if checking on her. "His name is Slither. I raised him from a baby." Grizzly stared at the massive snake. It was easily 12 feet long, with scales that gleamed in the afternoon sun, and yet beside the girl it looked almost gentle. It did not hiss, it did not strike. It just stayed close, like a loyal dog. "They came after me," the girl continued. She pointed to the man lying in the ditch. "He and another man. They chased me from the industrial site about 2 miles back. They had guns. They wanted this." She clutched a small flash drive to her chest. It was plain, black, with a scuffed surface. But the way she held it told Grizzly everything he needed to know. That little piece of plastic was worth more than gold. "Slither took one of them down," she said, her voice trembling. "He wrapped around him and squeezed until he stopped moving. The other one ran off. I think he went to call for backup." Grizzly looked at the man in the ditch. His face was purple and swollen. His arm was bent at a strange angle. The snake had done its job well. Grizzly knelt down so he was at the girl's eye level. He softened his voice. "What's on the flash drive?" The girl looked at him for a long moment. Her jaw tightened. Then she whispered, so quiet he almost did not hear her. "Evidence they're dumping toxic waste into the river. Chemicals that make people sick. That's what killed my mom." Grizzly felt his chest tighten. He looked over at Petey, who had gone quiet. The whole crew had gone quiet. These were not soft men. They had seen violence. They had caused it too, but this was different. This was a girl, alone, fighting a giant corporation with nothing but a snake and a flash drive. "You're sure about this?" Grizzly asked. The girl nodded. "I worked at the plant for 2 months, cleaning offices at night. I saw things. Barrels with warning labels that were buried in the ground. Pipes leaking into the creek. I copied their files onto this drive. They found out. They came after me." She looked down at her hands, which were shaking. "My mom used to say I was too stubborn for my own good. Maybe she was right." Grizzly let out a long breath. He looked at the snake again, which had raised its head and was watching him with calm, unblinking eyes. There was something wise about that snake. Something that said, "I trust her. You should too." Grizzly stood up. He made his decision right then. "All right," he said. "You're coming with us." The girl looked up, surprised. "What?" "You're coming with us," Grizzly repeated. "We have a clubhouse about an hour from here. You'll be safe there. We'll figure out what to do with that flash drive. But the men, they'll come looking for me." "Let them," Grizzly said. He looked at his crew. "Boys, tie up that man in the ditch. Gently, but make sure he stays put." 2 men nodded and walked over to the unconscious attacker. They pulled rope from their saddlebags and worked quickly, binding his wrists and ankles. They did not hurt him. They were rough men, but they were not cruel. The girl watched them, her eyes wide. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Grizzly looked at her. He thought about the long road behind him, the mistakes, the regrets, the people he had failed to protect. "Because someone should," he said simply. The girl's lip quivered. She looked like she was about to cry again, but she held it in. She nodded and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Okay," she said. "Okay." They got her onto a bike. Petey volunteered to take her, since his bike had the softest passenger seat. The girl climbed on behind him, clutching the flash drive in one hand. But then, they had a problem. Slither, the python, was not about to let the girl out of his sight. It slithered up to the bike and started to climb the frame, its long body wrapping around the rear fender. Petey looked down, his face pale. Grizzly, what do I do?" Grizzly watched the snake drape itself over the saddlebag like it was taking a nap. It looked comfortable. It looked like it planned to stay. "Let it ride," Grizzly said. Petey swallowed hard. "Let it ride." "Let it ride," Grizzly repeated. "That snake saved her life. It's earned a seat." The crew chuckled. Petey did not laugh. He just gripped the handlebars and stared straight ahead. The girl, despite everything, cracked a small smile. It was the first one Grizzly had seen on her face. "Thank you," she said softly. Grizzly nodded. He revved his engine. The crew followed, and they rode off down the highway, a pack of bikers, a runaway girl, and a 12-foot python heading for a clubhouse that was about to become something none of them expected. The clubhouse sat at the end of a long dirt road, hidden behind a wall of pine trees. It was a worn building with a sagging porch and a faded sign that read Malone's Garage. Inside, the main room held a bar, a few cracked leather couches, and a pool table with torn felt. It smelled like oil and old wood. It was not much, but it was safe. Grizzly led Riley through the front door. The crew filed in behind them, laughing and joking, but they went quiet when they saw the girl. She stood in the middle of the room, holding her backpack and looking around like a deer in a strange forest. "This is home base," Grizzly said. "It's not fancy, but it's solid." Riley nodded. She looked tired. Her shoulders sagged, and her legs wobbled just a little. Grizzly pointed to a stool near the bar. "Sit. Let me look at your arm." She sat. Grizzly grabbed a first aid kit from behind the bar and knelt beside her. She had a long scrape running from her elbow to her wrist. Dirt and dried blood clung to the skin. Grizzly worked slowly, cleaning the wound with water and a clean rag. He did it gently, the way a man might handle something precious. Riley winced but did not pull away. "You've done this before." "A few times," Grizzly said. "Mostly on myself." She almost smiled. "I'm Riley, by the way." "Riley Vance, Jack Malone," he said. "But everyone calls me Grizzly." "Because of the beard?" He laughed, a low rumble. "Because I'm grumpy in the mornings." For a moment it felt almost normal, like a grandfather fixing a skinned knee. But Grizzly's heart was beating too fast. He had seen something in her eyes. He did not know why yet. But something about her felt familiar. After he finished cleaning her arm, he stood up. "You need to wash up. There's a shower down the hall, second door on the left. I'll find you some clean clothes." Riley hesitated. She looked at Slither, who had curled into a tight coil near her feet. The python seemed calm, but his head was up, watching every move. "He'll be fine," Grizzly said. "Nothing in here will hurt him. Or you." Riley nodded slowly. She grabbed a small bag from her backpack and walked down the hall. The door clicked shut. Soon, the sound of running water filled the quiet. Grizzly stood still for a long moment. Then he looked down at her backpack. It had fallen open, and a few items spilled out. A worn sweater, a crumpled bus ticket, a small notebook with pencil scribbles, and something else. A thin silver chain with a small heart-shaped locket. Grizzly picked it up. His fingers trembled. The metal was tarnished and old, but he would know it anywhere. He had given it to a woman named Elena 20 years ago. He had loved her with everything he had. But he was a biker, a criminal, a man wrapped in violence and bad choices. He left town in the middle of the night because he did not want to drag her into his world. He never said goodbye. He opened the locket. Inside was a tiny photograph, a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes. She was smiling. His breath caught in his throat. It was her. It was Elena. And next to the photo, folded into a small square, was a piece of paper. Grizzly pulled it out and opened it carefully. His eyes scanned the words. His hands began to shake. It was a birth certificate. Name, Riley Marie Vance. Mother, Elena Marie Vance. Father, Jack Thomas Malone. Grizzly felt the floor drop out from under him. He sat down hard on the couch. His heart pounded so loud he could hear it in his ears. He had a daughter. He had a daughter. All these years, he had carried the guilt of leaving Elena. But he never knew. He never knew she had a child. His child. Riley. He stared at the birth certificate. Then he looked at the hall where Riley had disappeared, the girl who had been chased by armed men, the girl who had been protecting the truth with nothing but a snake and her own courage. That girl was his daughter. He slipped the locket into his vest pocket. He folded the birth certificate and put it there too. He had to be careful. He had to think. He could not tell her yet. Not like this. Not with danger still circling them like wolves. The shower stopped. A few minutes later, Riley came back wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants that hung loose on her thin frame. Her hair was wet and dark, and her cheeks were pink from the hot water. She looked smaller without her dirty clothes. She looked like a child. Grizzly forced his voice to stay steady. There's a room in the back. It's small, but it has a bed. You can stay there for a few days. Riley blinked. With Slither? Grizzly glanced at the python, which had uncoiled and was slithering toward her like it had radar. With Slither. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. He showed her to the room. It had a single bed, a wooden chair, and a window that looked out at the trees. Riley sat on the edge of the mattress. Slither slid under the bed, then curled up in the corner like a living rope. He seemed content. Good night, Riley, Grizzly said. Good night, Grizzly. He closed the door halfway. He watched her lie back on the pillow. Within minutes, her breathing slowed. She was asleep. Grizzly walked back to the main room. The crew had gone to their own bunks. The lights were low. He sat at the bar and pulled the locket from his pocket. He opened it again and stared at Elena's face. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Then he looked down the hallway, toward the room where his daughter slept. And for the first time in 20 years, a man who had lost everything felt like he had found something worth fighting for. The morning sun slipped through the cracks in the garage walls. Dust floated in the golden light like tiny stars. Grizzly stood at the workbench, the birth certificate spread out in front of him. He had not slept. His eyes were heavy, but his mind was sharp. One by one, the crew wandered in. Petey came first, rubbing his eyes. Then Mouse, a big man with a kind face. Then Bones, who never smiled but always showed up. The others followed until the garage was full. They stood in a loose circle, sipping coffee and waiting. Grizzly cleared his throat. I need to tell you something. The room went quiet. The men knew that tone. It meant serious business. Grizzly held up the birth certificate. Last night I found this in Riley's backpack. It's her birth certificate. Petey squinted. Okay, so she was born. What's the big deal? Grizzly's voice cracked. He swallowed hard. My name is on it. I'm her father. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crew. Mouse dropped his coffee mug. It hit the concrete floor and shattered, but nobody bent to pick up the pieces. Bones stepped forward. He studied the paper. Then, he looked at Grizzly with something soft in his hard eyes. You're sure? I knew her mother, Grizzly said. Elena Vance, 20 years ago. I loved her more than anything. I left because I was a mess. I never knew she was pregnant. She never told me. Petey shook his head. Man, that's a lot. Grizzly nodded. It is. But here's the thing. I don't just have a daughter. My daughter has the flash drive, the one with the evidence that could bring down a whole corporation. She risked her life to protect it. And now, those people know where she is. They know where we are. Mouse folded his arms. Then we protect her, simple as that. It's not simple, Grizzly said. I'm a biker, a criminal. I've done things I'm not proud of. But this girl, she's innocent. She needs someone to stand between her and the world, and I want that to be me. Bones grunted. You don't have to ask twice. She's family now. That python of hers, too. A low chuckle ran through the room. Grizzly looked at each man. His heart swelled. These were rough men, covered in tattoos and scars. They had done bad things. But they were standing here, ready to fight for a girl they barely knew. Because she was his blood. Because they were his brothers. Thank you, Grizzly said. His voice was thick. I don't have words for this. Petey grinned. That's a first. The laughter helped. It loosened the tension. Grizzly took a breath and got back to business. We need a plan, he said. The flash drive is the key. If we get it to the right person, the corporation is done. But we can't just walk into a newspaper office. We need someone who knows how to handle this. Someone with contacts. Petey raised a finger. I know a reporter. Marla something. She's done stories on corporate corruption before. She's clean. Trustworthy, you vouch for her? Grizzly asked. I vouch for her, Petey said. She helped a friend of mine expose a landlord who was poisoning his tenants. She doesn't back down. Grizzly nodded slowly. Okay, we reach out to her. But first, we need to move. This clubhouse is known. They will come looking here. We need to find a safe house. Somewhere off the grid. Mouse spoke up. I got a cabin up in the mountains. No electricity. No phone line. Nobody knows about it except me. It's a 2-hour ride, but it's hidden. Good, Grizzly said. We'll take Riley there tonight. Me and Petey will go with her. The rest of you stay here and keep eyes on the road. If anyone comes looking, you radio us. The men nodded. No arguments. No hesitation. Grizzly looked at the birth certificate again. He traced his finger over Riley's name. Then he folded it carefully and tucked it into his vest. I've never been a father, he said quietly. I don't know how to do it. But I'm going to learn. I'm going to earn her trust. I'm going to show her that she's not alone. Bones put a hand on his shoulder. You already are, brother. You already are. The door to the garage creaked. Riley stood in the doorway, holding Slither wrapped around her shoulders like a living scarf. Her hair was messy from sleep. Her eyes were wide and uncertain. Everything okay? She asked. Grizzly turned to her. He forced a calm smile. Everything's fine, kid. We're just making plans. You hungry? She nodded slowly. She looked at the men. They looked back at her. And for the first time, something passed between them. Not pity, not fear. Something like belonging. Grizzly walked over to her. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. We're going to keep you safe, Riley. I promise you that. She looked up at him. Her eyes searched his face, and though she did not say it, something in her expression softened. A crack in the armor. A tiny opening. Okay, she whispered, and that one word felt like a bridge. Small and fragile, but real. The evening came soft and quiet, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The crew had moved Riley to Mouse's cabin in the mountains, a small wooden place tucked among tall pines. No electricity. No phone. Just the sound of wind through the trees and the smell of wood smoke. Inside, the cabin was warm. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. Mouse had brought a big pot of stew, and the men passed around bowls like it was the most natural thing in the world. Riley sat at the wooden table, Slither coiled in a loose loop beside her chair. She held her spoon but did not eat at first. She just watched the men move around her. These rough strangers with tattoos and scars and loud laughter. Grizzly sat across from her. He did not push. He did not talk too much. He just ate his stew and waited. Then Petey said something stupid, and Bones grunted, and the whole table laughed. Riley's lips twitched. A tiny smile. Maybe the first one Grizzly had seen from her. She used to make stew like this, Riley said quietly. My mom. She would add extra carrots because she said they made you strong. The table went still. Not in a bad way. In a listening way. Mouse nodded slowly. Carrots were always the best part. Don't tell anyone I said that. Riley laughed. A small sound, but it filled the cabin. She talked more then. Maybe it was the warmth of the fire. Maybe it was the safety of the moment. She told them about her mother, Elena, how she worked 2 jobs and still found time to read Riley bedtime stories, how she taught Riley to be tough but kind, how she smiled even when things were hard. She got sick, Riley said. Her voice dropped. The water near our place was bad. The corporation knew. They dumped chemicals upstream. Mom got sick from it. The doctors said it was something in the water. But nobody could prove it. Nobody would listen. The men did not say anything. They just listened. And that was enough. I found Slither when he was this big. Riley held up her hands about a foot apart. He was in a ditch, all tangled in some old fishing line. He was scared and cold. I brought him home. Mom said I couldn't keep him. Then she saw how he looked at me. Riley smiled at the memory. She said, well, I guess he's family now. Slither raised his head, as if he knew he was being talked about. He flicked his tongue and settled back down. Grizzly watched her. His chest ached with something he could not name. Pride, guilt, love, all mixed together like the spices in the stew. This girl, his daughter, had been out there alone, struggling, fighting, and all this time he had not known. He cleared his throat. Your mom. She was a good woman. The best. Riley looked at him. Her eyes held a question she did not ask. How did you know her? But she did not push. Not yet. Maybe she was not ready. The fire popped and crackled. The men finished their meal in a comfortable silence. Then Petey stood up and disappeared into the corner. He came back with a guitar, old and worn, with scratches across the wood. Figured we might need some music tonight, he said. He sat down on a stool and strummed a few chords. The sound was warm, like honey dripping through the cabin. One by one, the men joined in. Bones hummed along. Mouse sang a low harmony. Even Grizzly, who never sang, tapped his foot against the floor. Petey started a song about the open road, about riding through the night with your brothers beside you, about finding home in unlikely places. The men sang together, their rough voices mixing into something surprisingly sweet. Riley watched them. She did not sing. But she swayed a little with the music, and when the song ended, she said, My mom used to sing that one. Grizzly's heart skipped. He did not know if it was the same song. But he did not correct her. He just nodded. Later, after the fire burned low and the men settled into sleeping bags on the floor, Riley yawned. The exhaustion was painted all over her face. Grizzly walked her to the small bedroom in the back of the cabin. There was a cot with a thick blanket. She laid down, and Slither curled up at her feet like a guard dog. "I'll be right outside," Grizzly said. "If you need anything, just call." She nodded, already half asleep. Then she whispered, "Thank you for not leaving." He stood there for a long moment. Then he closed the door softly and walked out to the porch. The night air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of pine. Grizzly sat on the wooden steps and lit a cigarette. The smoke curled up toward the stars, so bright up here in the mountains. He exhaled slowly and listened to the quiet of the forest. Slither slid out through the door. He moved with a slow, graceful rhythm across the porch and settled near Grizzly's feet. The big snake rested his head, as if keeping watch. Grizzly looked down at him. "You look out for her, don't you?" Slither flicked his tongue. Grizzly laughed, a low, soft sound. He looked up at the stars and thought of Elena. Her face came to him like a photograph, dark hair, kind eyes, a smile that could soften any hard day. He remembered the night he left. The stupid pride. The fear. The way he thought he was doing her a favor by disappearing. He took a long drag of his cigarette and let the smoke drift away. "I know you're watching," he whispered to the sky. "I know I messed up. I left you. I left her. But I'm here now. I'm going to protect her. I'm going to be the father she deserves. I promise you, Elena. I promise you." The stars did not answer. But the wind moved through the pines, soft like a breath. Slither stayed curled at his feet, silent and steady. Grizzly sat there for a long time, watching the night. And for the first time in 20 years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Okay, the user wants me to continue the story with Chapter 7. The chase begins. I need to follow the specific beat instructions closely. The starting scene is at dawn, with Grizzly getting a phone call from an underworld contact about the enforcers. The ending scene is the crew loading bikes and a black sedan spotting them, triggering the chase. I should assess the existing story. The previous chapter ended with a quiet, peaceful moment at the cabin. Now I need to shift the tone to tension and action. The user emphasized not to end with foreshadowing and to stop early if the required content is covered. So I need to include both beats, the phone call and the decision to move to the barn, and then the scene with the black sedan spotting them and the chase beginning. First, I'll establish the atmosphere at dawn to contrast with the previous evening's warmth. Grizzly is on the porch, still contemplative. The phone call needs to be sudden and alarming, delivering the threat. The dialogue should feel natural and urgent. I should show his reaction and the immediate effect on the crew. Then, the move to the barn. I need to describe Grizzly gathering the crew and Riley, the practical preparation, and the tension. Building the makeshift sidecar for Slither is a specific detail from the synopsis. I should show Riley's reaction to leaving and the temporary safety of the barn. Finally, the chase. The crew leaves the barn, and the black sedan spots them. I need to describe the moment of recognition, the turn, and the sudden eruption into a high-speed escape. The action should be clear and visual, with Riley holding on tight. I'll stop right after the chase begins, without adding any extra commentary or future hints. I'll use simple, clear language with short, impactful sentences to keep the pace quick. I'll show the emotions through actions and dialogue, Grizzly's protective anger, Riley's fear, the crew's readiness. The ending should be immediate and kinetic, leaving the scene right in the middle of the action. Dawn came gray and cold over the mountains. The first light barely touched the treetops when Grizzly's phone buzzed against the wooden table where he had fallen asleep. He stirred, his neck stiff from dozing in the chair on the porch. He grabbed the phone. Yeah, the voice on the other end was low and quick. One of his old contacts from Denver, a man who ran a pawn shop and heard things on the street. Grizzly, you got trouble coming. 2 men been asking questions all night. Big guys in black suits. They're looking for a girl with a snake. Said she stole something important. Grizzly sat up straight. The cold morning air hit his face. Where are they now? Last I heard, they were heading toward your end of the mountains. They got a black sedan. Bought gas in town about an hour ago. You need to move. Grizzly was already standing. Thanks, Frank, I owe you. You owe me big. Stay safe. The line went dead. Grizzly shoved the phone in his pocket and moved fast into the cabin. The fire had burned down to glowing coals. The men were scattered across the floor in sleeping bags, snoring in different keys. Wake up, Grizzly said, his voice sharp but not loud. We got company coming. Mouse was awake in an instant. He had been a soldier once, and old habits never died. How long? Maybe an hour. Maybe less. They're asking about Riley. The words landed like stones in water. Bones sat up. Petey rubbed his eyes. The room went from sleepy to alert in seconds. Grizzly moved to the back bedroom and pushed the door open. Riley was curled on the cot, Slither wrapped around her legs. Her face was peaceful in the dim light. For a moment, Grizzly just looked at her. Then he knelt and touched her shoulder. Riley, we need to go. Her eyes opened. She was scared for only a second, then her face hardened. She had learned to wake up ready. Bad news? Yeah, we got a safe place, an old barn outside town. We'll be okay there. She did not argue. She pulled on her jacket and slipped her feet into her boots. Slither uncoiled slowly, sensing the shift in the air. He moved to her side. 11 minutes later, the bikes were loaded. The men worked silently, checking engines, strapping gear. A few soft words passed between them. No noise, no wasted time. Grizzly looked at the python and made a quick decision. He grabbed an old metal sidecar that Mouse had been fixing up, a rusty thing with faded paint. He bolted it onto his bike with some help from Bones. It wasn't pretty, but it was sturdy. He lined it with a blanket from the cabin. Slither, get in, Grizzly said. The snake did not need to understand words. Riley guided him with a gentle hand. Slither coiled into the sidecar, his big body settling into the space like it was made for him. Riley looked at Grizzly. Surprised, he'll be safe there. I promise. She nodded and climbed onto the bike behind him. Her arms wrapped around his waist. She was small but strong. Grizzly could feel her heart beating through her chest. The crew mounted their bikes. Engines rumbled to life, a sound that filled the quiet morning like thunder. Grizzly led them down the dirt road, away from the cabin and into the trees. The old barn was about 20 minutes east. A forgotten place with rusted tin roof and weathered wood. Mouse's uncle had owned it years ago. No one went there anymore. It was perfect. They rode through the mountain curves, the cold wind biting at their faces. Riley held on tight. Grizzly could feel her hands gripping his jacket, small but sure. He wanted to tell her everything would be okay. But he knew better than to make promises he might not keep. They reached the barn in good time. It stood at the end of a long gravel drive, hidden by tall grass and old oak trees. The men pulled inside and cut the engines. The silence rushed back in, almost louder than the motors. "Petey, watch the road," Grizzly said. "Bones, check the perimeter. Mouse, help me get this door closed." They worked fast. Petey knelt by a crack in the barn wall, eyes fixed on the distance. The minutes crawled by. Riley stayed close to Slither, her hand resting on his warm scales. Then Petey's voice, low and urgent. "We got company." Grizzly moved to the crack and peered out. A black sedan rolled down the road, slow like a shark circling. It passed the barn. For a moment, hope flickered. Then the brake lights came on. The car stopped, started to turn around. Grizzly looked at Riley. She looked back at him. "Steady, ready, everybody mount up," Grizzly said. His voice was calm, but his hands were already moving. "We ride." Now, the engines roared to life. Grizzly kicked the bike into gear. Riley's arms tightened around him. Slither held his position in the sidecar, eyes bright and watchful. They burst out of the barn. Dust flew. Gravel sprayed. The black sedan accelerated toward them, and Grizzly twisted the throttle. The chase was on. Grizzly pushed the bike hard. The engine screamed as they tore down the mountain road. Riley pressed her face into his back. He could feel her holding on with everything she had. Behind them, the black sedan fought to keep up. But these roads were Grizzly's home. He had ridden them for 20 years. He knew every curve, every dip, every place where a man could disappear. He took a sharp left onto a dirt path. Not a real road, just a gap in the trees that looked like nothing. The tires slid on loose gravel. Riley gasped, but did not let go. Slither stayed low in the sidecar, his body steady. The sedan shot past the turn. Brakes squealed. But by the time the driver reversed, Grizzly was already deep in the woods. 3 more turns. A creek crossing, a fallen log that he jumped like it was nothing. Then the trees opened, and there it was. The barn, old and gray and forgotten. It sat in a grove of tall pines, hidden from the road by a wall of green. Grizzly killed the engine and coasted the last few feet. The other bikes followed, one by one, silent as ghosts. They pulled inside and cut the motors. The quiet rushed in. For a long moment, nobody spoke. They just listened to their own breathing. Petey slipped off his bike and moved to the door. He scanned the tree line. Nobody followed us. Grizzly nodded. Bones, Mouse, set up lookout. 1 at the front tree line, 1 at the back. Rotate every 2 hours. The men moved without a word. They knew the drill. They had done this 100 times before in 100 different places. Grizzly helped Riley off the bike. Her legs were shaky. She stood for a moment, finding her balance. Slither uncoiled from the sidecar and wrapped himself gently around her waist. She put a hand on his head. "You okay?" Grizzly asked. Yeah, her voice was small. Then she looked up at him. "You saved us." "We saved each other." She almost smiled. Almost. The barn was bigger than it looked from outside. Mouse had stored gear here for years. There were crates of canned food, bottles of water, blankets, a first aid kit, and a small generator in the corner. Petey fired it up. A single bulb flickered on overhead. Grizzly pulled out a burner phone, the kind that could not be traced. He punched in a number from memory, a number he had not called in 3 years. It rang twice. Grizzly Malone. The voice on the other end was a woman's. Low, steady, a little amused. "I figured you'd call eventually. What kind of trouble are you in this time?" "Marla." investigative reporter. She had spent 20 years exposing the worst kinds of people, politicians who stole, companies that poisoned. She had the scars to prove it. Not trouble, Marla. Justice. He glanced at Riley. I got evidence of toxic dumping. Big corporation. They killed people. I need you to see it. How big? Big enough that they're sending armed men after us. There was a pause. He could almost hear her thinking. Where and when? The old Miller farm, outside of town. You remember it? I remember it. 8 tonight. I'll bring my camera. Don't bring anyone else. Grizzly, I've been doing this since before you grew that beard. I know how to be careful. He almost laughed. See you at 8. The line went dead. Riley was watching him from a pile of old blankets. Slither rested beside her, his head raised, watching the room. She looked tired. Scared, but there was something else in her eyes too. Hope, a small, fragile thing. Like a candle in the wind. Who was that? She asked. A reporter. She's good. She's honest. She'll know what to do with that flash drive. Riley pulled the drive from her pocket. It was small and black, scuffed from being held too tight. She looked at it like it was the most precious thing in the world. Maybe it was. There's more, she said softly. What do you mean? She looked up at him. The drive is locked. Encrypted, the files are protected by a password that changes every few hours. The company uses a special software to keep it safe. Grizzly frowned. Can we break it? Riley shook her head. Not easily. But I know how. My father was a computer engineer before he left. He taught my mom. She taught me. Grizzly felt the words land in his chest. Her father. He swallowed the lump in his throat. What do you need? He asked. Just a computer. And the right software. It's free online. Petey stepped forward. He was the youngest of the crew, wire-thin with quick hands and sharper eyes. I got a laptop in my saddlebag. It's not fancy, but it works. Riley looked at him. A little surprised, a little hopeful. It's called Sentinel Decrypt, she said. You can download it from the dark web. It won't show up in normal searches. Petey grinned. I know the dark web. He pulled out his laptop and set it up on an old crate. The screen glowed blue in the dim barn. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Mouse and Bones stood watch outside. The others gathered close. Quiet. Riley stood beside Petey. She pointed at different parts of the screen. The drive uses a double layer. First, you have to bypass the boot password. Then the files are encoded with a rotating key. But there's a back door. The company left a hidden access code in the software source code. If we find it, we can unlock everything. Petey nodded. Give me an hour. Riley did something rare. She smiled. A real smile. It changed her whole face. We need to copy everything, she said. Then send it to multiple people. Not just Marla. We need backup. In case something happens to us. Grizzly looked at her with a new kind of respect. She was not just a scared kid. She was smart. She was thinking ahead. You heard her, he said to the crew. We make copies. We send them everywhere. No matter what happens tonight, the truth gets out. The men nodded. A quiet understanding passed between them. This was bigger than them now. Petey tapped the keyboard. The laptop hummed. Riley leaned in close, watching the screen. Slither raised his head, as if he could see the digital lines moving across the dark. And in the quiet of the hidden barn, a new kind of hope began to grow. Small, insistent, like the first green shoot pushing through hard soil. The crew moved with quiet purpose around the barn. Cans were stacked. Blankets were laid out. Petey's fingers never stopped moving across the keyboard. Grizzly watched Riley from across the room. She sat on an old milk crate, holding Slither close. The python's head rested on her shoulder. Her eyes were fixed on some point far away. He knew that look. He had worn it himself 1,000 times. "Riley," he said softly, "come with me." She looked up, wary, but she stood. Slither followed, his long body sliding across the dusty floor. Grizzly led her to a small corner of the barn. A stack of hay bales made a rough wall. It was private enough, away from the others. He sat down on a bale and gestured for her to sit across from him. She did. Slither coiled at her feet. "I need to ask you something," Grizzly said. His voice was low. Gentle, not the voice of a Hell's Angel. The voice of a man trying to be careful. Riley nodded. "Your mother," he said. "What was she like?" Riley's eyes softened. A small smile tugged at her lips. She was strong, stubborn. She never gave up on anything. She paused. She used to sing in the kitchen. Old songs, country songs. She had a terrible voice, but she sang anyway. Grizzly felt something crack inside him. He knew that voice. He remembered it. "She worked 2 jobs, Riley went on. Sometimes 3. She always said we were going to make it. She said we just had to hold on a little longer." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a tattered photograph. It was worn at the edges, folded in the middle. The colors had faded to soft browns and yellows. She held it out to him. The photo showed a young woman with long dark hair and bright eyes. She was laughing. Her head was tilted back. Her arms were open wide, like she was about to hug the whole world. Grizzly's breath caught. His hand shook as he took the photo. He traced the line of her face with his thumb. He knew that smile. He had seen it 100 times. It had been his whole world once. "Where did you get this?" he asked. His voice was barely a whisper. "My mom always carried it. She said it was the only photo she had of herself being truly happy." Riley looked at him. "She never told me who took it. She only said it was someone she loved." Grizzly reached into his jacket. His fingers found the chain. He pulled out the locket. It was old and silver, worn smooth in places from years of being touched. He held it in his palm for a long moment. Then he opened it. Inside was the same photo, same woman, same laugh, same open arms. Riley stared. Her face went pale. That's the same picture." "Yes," Grizzly said. "How do you have it?" He took a deep breath. His heart was pounding. He had faced down men with guns. He had walked into danger without blinking. But this was the hardest thing he had ever done. "Because I was there," he said. "I'm the one who took that photo." Riley's brow furrowed. She shook her head slowly. "What do you mean?" "I knew your mother, Riley. I knew her very well." He paused. Swallowed. Her name was Sarah. She had a laugh that could light up a whole room. She loved old country songs and singing them wrong. Riley's eyes widened. How do you know that?" "Because I loved her." His voice cracked. "I loved her more than I ever loved anyone." Riley pulled back. Her body went stiff. "No, Riley, No," she said again, louder. She stood up. Slither raised his head, sensing the change. "You're lying. You're just saying this to make me trust you. I'm not lying. Then why did you leave?" Her voice rose. "She loved you. She waited for you. She cried for you. And you just left." "I didn't know," he said. His voice was thick. "I swear to you, I didn't know about you. She never told me." I left town for a job, and when I came back, she was gone. I looked for her. For years. But I never found her. Riley's breath came in short bursts. Her eyes were wet. Slither moved closer to her, his body wrapping around her legs. She died, Riley said. She died a year ago. And I was alone. All alone in that apartment. And I had nobody. Grizzly stood. He took a step toward her. You're not alone anymore. Yes, I am. Tears streamed down her face. I've always been alone. My whole life. And now you show up and tell me you're my father? Where were you? Where were you when I was hungry, when I was scared, when I was hiding from those men? Grizzly felt his own eyes burn. He had no words, no excuses. He only had the truth. I was lost, he said. I was angry at the world. I made 1,000 mistakes. But this. You're the best thing I never knew I had. Riley shook her head. Her hands were fists at her sides. But then her shoulders sagged. The anger drained out of her all at once. She looked at him. For a long moment. Then she spoke. Her voice was small. I don't know if I can forgive you. Grizzly nodded. You don't have to. Not yet. Not today. Just know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. She was silent. Then, slowly, almost like it hurt, she stepped forward. She wrapped her arms around him. It was awkward. Stiff, but it was real. Grizzly held her. Gently, like she was made of glass. He buried his face in her hair and let the tears fall. Slither moved between them. His big body circled both of them. He wrapped around their waists, pulling them closer together. It was warm and heavy and strangely safe. Riley laughed through her tears. He thinks you need protecting. Maybe I do, Grizzly said. They stood there in the dim barn, the python holding them together. A broken family starting to heal. Petey's fingers flew across the keyboard. His eyes were locked on the screen. The rest of the crew stood behind him, watching. The barn was silent except for the soft clicking of keys. Almost there, Petey muttered. The encryption is old. It's from the early 2000s. This should be easy. Grizzly stood at the back. Riley was beside him. Slither was coiled at her feet. They all waited. Then Petey let out a low whistle. Got it. The screen filled with files. Video files. Document files. Spreadsheets. Hundreds of them. Petey clicked on a folder marked Dump Site Operations. The first video was grainy. It showed a truck at night. Workers in hazmat suits. They were pouring dark liquid into a ditch. The camera zoomed in on a sign. It read Town Water Supply Intake, second miles. Riley gasped. The next video showed the same truck, same dumping, a different location, near a school. The next one was worse. It showed a meeting. A man in a suit sat at a table. He was smiling. He was handing money to a government official. The official nodded and took it. Look at that, Petey said. They bought off the inspectors. They clicked through more files. Documents, emails, they showed orders from the top. From the corporate boss himself. He had ordered the dumping. He had known the risks. He did not care. Then Riley saw something. She pointed at the screen. Her hand was shaking. Stop. Go back. Petey clicked back. It was a map. A red circle marked a neighborhood. The map had a label at the top. Zone 4, High Cancer Rate Analysis. Riley's face went white. That's where we lived. My mom and me. Grizzly stepped closer. He put his hand on her shoulder. She did not pull away. Petey opened the file. It contained medical records. Hundreds of them. All from the same neighborhood. All with the same diagnosis. Cancer, leukemia, lung disease. And at the bottom, a list of deaths. Riley reached out. Her finger pointed to a name near the bottom. Sarah Miller. Her mother. The room went silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Riley stood very still. Her face was hard, but her eyes were wet. She died from the water, Riley said. Her voice was barely a whisper. The water they poisoned. Grizzly felt a fire rise in his chest. It started as a small spark. It grew, it spread, it burned through every part of him. He had been angry before. He had been furious. He had fought men. He had broken bones. But this was different. This was grief. This was rage. This was the kind of anger that changes a man. He looked at Riley, at her small frame, at the tears she was fighting, at the strength she held in her thin shoulders. He knelt down. He took her hands in his. "Listen to me," he said. His voice was low. "Steady your mother. She was brave. She was strong. She never gave up." Riley nodded. A tear slipped down her cheek. These men, they took her. They took her because they cared more about money than people. He squeezed her hands. "But they made a mistake." "What mistake?" Riley asked. "They left the evidence, and they left you alive." Grizzly stood. He looked at his crew. They were watching him. Waiting. They knew what was coming. "We're going to honor your mother," Grizzly said. "We're going to bring these men to justice. Not for revenge. For her. For the town. For everyone they hurt." Petey nodded. "I can copy all this to a drive. We can hand it to Marla. She'll know what to do." "I want them to see it," Riley said. "I want them to know we did this." Grizzly turned to her. "You will. I promise you. They will know." The crew moved into action. Petey started copying files. 2 men checked the windows. Another cleaned guns. They were ready. Grizzly looked at Riley. She was watching the screen, watching her mother's name on the list. He stepped closer. "You okay?" She nodded. Then she looked up at him. Her eyes were red. But they were clear. "You said you would protect me. You meant it?" "I meant it." "Then protect them," she said. "Protect the people who couldn't protect themselves." Grizzly felt his chest tighten. This girl, this strong, brave, wonderful girl, she was his daughter. "I will," he said. "I swear to you. On your mother's memory, I will." Riley reached out. She took his hand. Slither rose up and wrapped around their joined hands. It was warm. It was strong. Petey clicked a button. The drive was ready. 5 a.m., Petey said. "I know where Marla works. We can meet her in the parking lot before her shift starts." The crew gathered. They formed a circle around Grizzly and Riley. No one spoke. No one needed to. They were all in this together. Grizzly looked at the drive in his hand. Then he looked at his daughter, his family, his crew. "Tomorrow," he said. "We set things right." The barn was quiet now. The only light came from a single lamp on the workbench. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. It was late, the kind of late that makes a man tired to his bones. But no one was sleeping. The crew sat on old crates and chairs. They formed a loose circle. In the middle, Petey spread a paper map across the table. It was worn and creased. He tapped a spot with his finger. "There's a diner here," he said. "The Bluebird. It sits right off the highway. Truckers stop there. Families stop there. It is always busy even at 5 in the morning." Grizzly leaned over the map. He studied the roads, the parking lot, the exits. "Good," he said. "A busy place is safe. Too many witnesses. The wrong people will not try anything in a crowd." Petey nodded. "Marla starts her shift at 6. She usually gets coffee there before work. We can meet her at 5:30. She will blend right in." Grizzly pointed to a spot across the street. I will park here. I will walk in alone. I will carry a copy of the drive in my jacket pocket. He looked up at his crew. You will stay here. You will keep watch. If anything looks wrong, you move in. One of the men, a big man named Tank, spoke up. What about Riley? And the snake? Grizzly glanced at Riley. She was sitting on a hay bale near the back. Slither was coiled beside her. She was quiet. Her eyes were on the map. They stay with you, Grizzly said. You keep them safe, no matter what. Tank nodded. You got it. Grizzly turned back to the map. He traced the route with his finger. He checked the time. He checked the distance. He thought about every step. Petey, he said, you will stay in the van. You will have the radio. You will tell us if you see anything. Got it. And Marla, Grizzly said, she will bring her own camera. She will take the drive. She will do the rest. The plan was simple. It was clean. It was good. Then Riley stood up. I want to come, she said. The room went still. Grizzly turned slowly. He looked at her. Her chin was up. Her arms were crossed. She looked small, but she looked fierce. No, he said. Riley stepped forward. I have a right to be there. That drive is my evidence. My mother's name is on that list. I should be the one to hand it over. Grizzly shook his head. It is too dangerous. Dangerous? Riley's voice rose. I have been in danger for a year. I have been running. I have been hiding. I have been protecting myself. I do not need you to protect me now. The crew shifted. No one spoke. Grizzly walked toward her. He stopped a few feet away. He looked down at her. His voice was low, gentle but firm. I know you can protect yourself, he said. I have seen it. You are the bravest person I have ever met. Riley blinked. She did not expect that. But this is different, Grizzly said. This is not about running. This is about walking into a place where the enemy could be watching. If they see you, they will grab you. They will use you to get the drive, and everything we have done will be for nothing. Riley's jaw tightened. Then I will wear a disguise. A disguise? Yes, she looked at him. I will wear a hat, a jacket. I will sit in a booth. I will keep my head down. I will not talk to anyone. I will just watch. Grizzly stared at her. He wanted to say no. Every part of him wanted to say no. But he saw her eyes. He saw the fire in them. He saw her mother's name on that list. He saw the grief she carried. And he understood. She needed to be there. She needed to see it happen. She needed to be part of the moment her mother was finally honored. He let out a long breath. If you come, you follow my instructions. Exactly, no arguing, no running, no talking to anyone. You sit, you watch, and when I say it is time to go, you go. Do you understand? Riley nodded. I understand. And Slither stays with the crew, Grizzly said. Riley opened her mouth to argue. Grizzly held up his hand. Slither is not a disguise, he said. A giant snake in a diner will draw attention. He stays. He will be safe. Tank will watch him. Riley looked at Slither. The python lifted his head. He seemed to understand. He flicked his tongue. Then he settled back down. Okay, Riley said softly. He stays. Grizzly stepped closer. He put his hands on her shoulders. He looked into her eyes. You stay in that diner. You stay quiet. You stay safe. That is the deal. Riley met his gaze. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then she nodded. It is a deal. Grizzly pulled her into a hug. It was quick. It was rough. But it was real. Riley hugged him back. The crew watched. No one smiled. But something passed between them. A trust. A bond. A promise. The plan was set. The night was quiet, and in the morning they would set things right. The next morning came gray and cold. The plan had changed. The diner was too predictable, too public. The enemy could have people watching it. Instead, they chose a dive bar on the edge of town. It was called the Rusty Spur. The sign hung crooked, the windows were dirty, a few old trucks sat in the gravel lot. Grizzly parked his bike near the back. He wore a plain jacket. No colors, no patches. He wanted to blend in. Petey waited in a beat-up van across the street. The crew stayed at the barn with Riley. They would be ready if anything went wrong. Grizzly walked in. The air smelled like old wood and stale coffee. A few men sat at the bar. A jukebox played a sad country song. No one looked up. He found a corner booth. He sat with his back to the wall. He watched the door. Then Marla came in. She was a slim woman in her late 50s. She wore a trench coat and carried a big leather bag. She looked around the bar with sharp eyes. She did not look comfortable. Grizzly raised his hand. She saw him. She walked over and slid into the booth across from him. "You picked a real charming spot," she said. "Safe," Grizzly said. The diner was risky. Marla set her bag on the seat. "I have been doing this job for 30 years. I have met informants in parking garages, in back alleys, in a fish market once. This is not the worst." Grizzly almost smiled. "Good." He reached into his jacket. He pulled out the flash drive. It was small and black. He placed it on the table between them. "The evidence is on there," he said. Toxic waste dumping. Fake permits. A list of names. The sick children. The poisoned water. Everything. Marla looked at the drive. She did not touch it yet. "You understand what you are giving me?" she asked. "Yes, this will bring down a very powerful man. Men like that do not go quietly. They fight back." Grizzly nodded. "I know." Marla picked up the drive. She turned it over in her hand. A small smile crossed her face. "This is incredible," she said quietly. "I have been trying to break this story for months. The corporation is careful. They bury every lead. But this..." She held up the drive. "This is the whole thing." Grizzly felt a weight lift off his chest. "It belongs to a young woman. Her mother died because of what they did. She risked everything to get it." Marla looked at him. "Where is she?" "Safe. With my crew." Marla nodded. She put the drive in her bag. "I will verify the files. Then I will start a chain of contacts. We will release the story before they can bury it. Give me 2 days." 2 days, Grizzly said. They talked a little more. Marla asked questions. Grizzly answered. He kept his voice low. He kept an eye on the room. But he did not see everything. At the bar, a man in a suit sat on a stool. He nursed a glass of water. He did not look like he belonged. He wore a dark suit. His shoes were polished. His hands were still. He watched the corner booth. He watched Marla. He watched her put the drive in her bag. Then Marla finished. She stood up. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. 2 days, she said. Maybe less. I will call you. She walked toward the door. Grizzly watched her go. Then, he saw it. The man in the suit got up. He set his glass down. He walked out the door right behind Marla. Grizzly's body went cold. He slid out of the booth. He moved fast. He pushed through the door into the gray morning. The parking lot was empty. The man was gone. Marla stood by her car. She looked confused. Where did he go? She asked. What? Grizzly looked around. The man in the suit. He followed you out. Marla's face went pale. I did not see anyone. Grizzly scanned the lot. Nothing, no car, no movement, just gravel and wind. The man had vanished. Then Marla looked at her car. She gasped. The driver's side window was smashed. Glass glittered on the ground. The door hung open. "My car," she said. Her voice shook. "Someone tampered with my car." Grizzly walked to her. He put a hand on her arm. "Did he take the drive?" Marla grabbed her bag. She opened it. The flash drive was still inside. She let out a shaky breath. "No, it is still here." "Then he was not here to take it," Grizzly said. "He was here to find you, to scare you. Maybe worse." Marla looked at the broken glass. Then she looked at Grizzly. "What do I do now?" "You come with me," Grizzly said. "Right now. We go back to the barn. You will be safe there." Marla hesitated. She looked at her car. Then she looked at Grizzly. She nodded. She climbed onto the back of his motorcycle. She held on tight. They rode hard and fast, leaving the dive bar behind. At the barn, the crew came out to meet them. Tank stood in the doorway. Riley stepped forward. Slither was coiled in the shadow behind her. Marla looked at the big men. She looked at Riley. She looked at the python. She let out a surprised laugh. "Well," she said softly, "this is not what I expected." Riley tilted her head. "Are you Marla, the reporter?" Marla nodded. "I am, and you must be the brave young woman with the evidence." Riley almost smiled. "Yes." Marla looked around at the crew. She looked at Grizzly. Something shifted in her face. The fear softened. A little. "I think I am safe here," she said. Grizzly nodded. "Yes, you are." The barn was warm that night. The crew sat in a loose circle. Petey worked on a laptop near the generator. Tank cleaned his pistol. The others talked in low voices. Marla sat close to Riley. Slither lay curled in a corner, his scales shining in the lantern light. They were planning the next step. The flash drive was with Marla. But she could not upload the files from the barn. The internet was too slow. The signal was weak. They needed to get her to a safe place with a secure connection. Grizzly stood near the big door. He looked out at the dark field. He did not like the quiet. It felt too still. "We move at dawn," he said. "Petey knows a place. A library in the next county. We get Marla there. She uploads everything. Then we are done." Riley looked up. "And then what?" Grizzly turned. He looked at her. The lantern light caught her face. She looked young and tired. "Then we go somewhere safe," he said. "All of us." Riley nodded. She did not argue, but her eyes were worried. The first shot shattered a window. Glass exploded. The crew hit the ground. Grizzly shouted, "Get down." Headlights from 3 black SUVs cut through the field. Men poured out. They carried rifles. Muzzle flashes lit up the dark. The crew fired back. Tank took cover behind an old workbench. His pistol barked. One of the men fell. The others kept coming. The barn door splintered. A bullet tore through a stack of hay. Fire bloomed. The dry hay caught fast. Smoke filled the air. "Riley!" Grizzly yelled, "Get under the floor." Riley grabbed Slither. The big python coiled around her shoulders. His weight was heavy. She ran to the loose floorboard near the back wall. She pulled it up. A dark space waited below. Marla was right behind her. She climbed down first. Riley followed. She pulled the board back over them. Darkness closed in. Through the cracks, Riley could see fire. She could hear shouting. Men screamed. Glass broke. The world above her was tearing apart. Slither squeezed her gently. It was not a crushing squeeze. It was a comfort. His scales were cool against her cheek. She held him tight. Marla put her hand on Riley's arm. "Stay still," she whispered. "Stay quiet." Above them, Grizzly fought. He had a shotgun in his hands. He moved behind an old tractor. He fired. The recoil shook his shoulder. He did not stop. Tank took a bullet to the arm. He cursed, but kept firing. Petey crawled low, dragging a box of shells. He tossed one to Grizzly. "There are too many." Petey shouted. Grizzly looked around. The barn was burning. The flames were climbing the walls. The smoke was thick. They could not hold this position much longer. "Back exit," he shouted. "Everyone move." The crew fell back. They fired as they moved. The attackers pressed forward, but the flames worked in the bikers' favor. The heat forced the men back. Grizzly reached the floorboard. He pulled it up. "Riley." "Marla." "Come on." Riley climbed out. Slither still wrapped around her. Marla followed. Smoke stung their eyes. The heat was fierce. The back exit was a small door. Tank kicked it open. Cold night air rushed in. "Go." Grizzly shoved Riley through the door. She stumbled into the dark. Marla followed. The crew came out behind them. The motorcycles were parked in a row behind the barn. Not all of them. The fire was spreading. The heat was intense. Grizzly swung onto his bike. "Riley." "Get on." She climbed on behind him. Slither coiled between them. The python's weight was awkward. But no one cared. Marla got on behind Tank. The engines roared. The crew tore away from the burning barn. They cut into the forest. The trail was narrow and winding. Trees flashed past. Branches whipped at their arms. Grizzly looked back. The barn was a pillar of fire. Orange flames licked the night sky. Black smoke rolled upward. The SUVs were dark shapes in the field. Men shouted, but the sound faded as the bikes weaved deeper into the trees. They had lost everything. The barn, the supplies, the gear, the safe place. All of it was ash. But Riley's arms were tight around his waist. He felt her grip. He felt the steady weight of Slither against his back. She was safe. She was with him. That was enough. He rode faster. The forest swallowed them. The flames disappeared behind the trees. But Grizzly kept seeing them in his mind. He knew the fight was not over, but right now there was only the road ahead and the daughter behind him. He held on. He kept going. The crew followed. And the night closed in around them. The motel sign flickered. Pine Grove Inn, it said, though the paint was faded and the letters were crooked. The parking lot was empty. A single light burned over the office door. Grizzly killed the engine. The sudden quiet felt loud. He sat there a moment, feeling Riley's arms still wrapped around his waist. She had not let go the whole ride. "It's okay," he said softly. "We're safe now." She loosened her grip. Slither shifted between them, his heavy coils sliding as she climbed off the bike. Her legs wobbled. She grabbed the handlebar to steady herself. Grizzly caught her elbow. "Easy now." She looked up at him. Her face was smudged with soot. Her eyes were red from the smoke and the wind. She looked small in the dim light. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you inside." The crew filed into 2 rooms. Tank bought the rooms using a fake name and cash. No one asked questions. The clerk barely looked up from his magazine. Riley sat on the edge of the bed. Slither uncoiled from her shoulders and settled on the floor beside her. His head rested against her knee. She stroked his scales without thinking. Grizzly stood by the door. He watched her. He had watched her a lot that night. The way she moved, the way she held herself, the way she never once complained. Marla came in with a first aid kit. She cleaned a small cut on Riley's arm. Riley winced but did not pull away. "You're brave," Marla said. Riley shook her head. "I'm just tired." Marla smiled. "Those can be the same thing." The room fell quiet. The crew moved in and out. Petey checked his laptop. Tank wrapped his wounded arm in a bandage. The others took turns keeping watch outside. Grizzly stayed by the door. His eyes never left Riley for long. He saw her shiver. He grabbed a blanket from the closet and handed it to her. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded. He did not know what to say. The hours passed slowly. The clock on the nightstand ticked. The heater hummed. Slither's breathing was slow and steady. Riley pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She looked at Grizzly. There was something in her eyes, a question she had been holding for too long. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Grizzly sat on the chair across from her. "Anything," she took a breath. "I found the locket in my backpack, the one with my mom's picture." Grizzly went still. His jaw tightened. "There was a birth certificate too," she said. "I saw your name on it, before everything got crazy tonight. I saw it." He did not say anything. He could not. Riley's voice shook. I think you're my father." The words hung in the air. Heavy, quiet, real, Grizzly lowered his head. His hands rested on his knees. They were big hands, rough hands, hands that had done things he was not proud of. But right now, they trembled. "Yeah," he said. His voice was hoarse. "Yeah, I am." Riley let out a breath. It sounded like she was holding it for years. Grizzly looked up. His eyes were wet. "Your mom." "Her name was Anna." He paused. "We met in a small town outside Denver. I was young, dumb, full of anger and noise. She was gentle. Too gentle for someone like me." Riley listened. She did not move. "We had a good few months," he said. "Best of my life. But I was running from something. I did not know what. I just knew I could not stay still." He swallowed hard. "I left one morning. I told her I would come back. I meant it too, but life got loud again. I got caught up in work, in the club, in things I am not proud of." He rubbed his face. "I never knew about you," he said. "I swear, I did not know she was pregnant. If I had known, I would have come back. I would have stayed. I would have been there." His voice cracked. "I am sorry, Riley. I am so sorry." The room was quiet. Slither lifted his head. His tongue flicked out. He seemed to sense the weight in the room. Riley sat very still. Tears ran down her cheeks. She did not wipe them away. Grizzly stayed where he was. He did not move closer. He did not reach out. He waited. Because he knew he did not deserve to reach out. Not after all these years. Then Riley stood up. She walked toward him. Her steps were slow, uncertain, but she kept moving. She stopped in front of him. She looked down at his face, at the scars, at the gray in his beard, at the tears he could not hide. She took his hand. It was rough and calloused, but she held it anyway. "You didn't know," she said. Her voice was soft. Steady. "You didn't know. But you're here now. That's what matters." Grizzly looked up at her. His breath caught. "I spent a year thinking I had no one," Riley said. "No family. No one to watch my back. And then a snake saved me. And then you did too." She squeezed his hand. "You showed up. That counts for something." Grizzly pulled her into his arms. It was careful, gentle, like she was the most precious thing he had ever held. And she was. Riley buried her face in his shoulder. She cried. He cried too. Neither of them said anything else. Slither uncoiled from the floor. He moved across the carpet. His massive body slid up onto the bed, then wrapped around both of them. His coils surrounded them. Warm, heavy, safe. The crew watched from the doorway. Petey's eyes were wet. Tank cleared his throat. Marla smiled through her tears. Grizzly held his daughter. Slither held them both. And for the first time in a very long time, Grizzly felt like he was exactly where he belonged. The morning came in through the thin motel curtains. It was a pale gray light, soft and gentle. Riley woke up with Slither coiled at the foot of the bed. She blinked. For a second, she forgot where she was. Then, she remembered everything. Grizzly was already up. He stood by the window looking out at the empty parking lot. His coffee sat on the nightstand untouched. When he heard her move, he turned. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she said back. Her voice was still raspy from sleep and smoke. She sat up and rubbed her eyes. Slither lifted his head, flicked his tongue at her, then settled back down. The crew gathered in the next room. Petey had his laptop open. The screen glowed with lines of code. Marla sat beside him, reading over his shoulder. "Here's the plan," Marla said. "I have a contact who runs a secure server out of state. If we can upload the evidence there, it goes live automatically at noon tomorrow. No one can stop it. But the upload needs to stay stable for at least 2 hours." Petey tapped the keyboard. "Problem is, this motel's internet is a potato. We need better equipment." Tank crossed his arms. "So, we get better equipment." Grizzly nodded. "We split up. Petey and Tank, you go to the electronics store. Get a portable booster and a satellite modem. Marla, you stay here and prep the files. Everyone else, keep watch." The crew moved out. The morning sun climbed higher as they left, the parking lot filled with the sound of engines. Riley stood in the doorway. She watched them go. Grizzly came up beside her. "You want to learn something?" he asked. She looked at him. "What?" "Come on," he pointed at his motorcycle. "Time you learned how to ride." Her eyes went wide. "Me? On that?" He almost smiled. "You're not afraid of a snake the size of a fire hose. You can handle a bike." She let out a nervous laugh. Then she followed him. The lot behind the motel was wide and empty. Cracks ran through the asphalt. Weeds pushed up through the edges. Grizzly showed her the basics. The clutch, the throttle, the brakes. He spoke slow and clear, the way he would explain something to a scared recruit. "The bike wants to stay up," he said. "Your job is to not get in its way. Trust it. Trust yourself." Riley climbed on. Her hands shook a little on the grips. Slither watched from a patch of grass. His head stayed raised, following her every move. Grizzly held the back of the seat. "Start slow. Let the clutch out easy." She did. The bike lurched forward. She gasped. Then she giggled. "You're doing it," he said. She let the clutch out a little more. The engine hummed. She wobbled, but she stayed up. The wind moved through her hair. Her shoulders dropped. A real laugh came out of her, bright and loud. "Okay," she called. "That's kind of amazing." Grizzly jogged alongside her. His boots hit the pavement. For a short while, they were just a man and a girl on a motorcycle. The danger was far away. The worry was gone. She made it halfway across the lot before she lost her balance. He caught the bike before it could tip. She laughed again, breathless. "I think you're a natural," he said. She looked up at him. Her eyes were bright. "Can we go again?" He nodded, and they did. By evening, the crew came back. Petey had the equipment. Tank had a stack of pizza boxes. The smell filled the room. Riley's stomach growled. They cleared the small table. The boxes opened. Cheese and pepperoni and mushrooms. The crew pulled up chairs. Some sat on the floor. Riley sat cross-legged on the bed, Slither resting across her lap. Petey told a story about a guy who tried to adjust a muffler and accidentally set his own shirt on fire. Tank told one about a dog that adopted their clubhouse and refused to leave. Marla told a quiet one about a story she chased for 7 years. Riley listened. She laughed. She added a tiny story about Slither once escaping his tank and sleeping in her backpack for a full day without her noticing. The room filled with warmth. The pizza got smaller. The stories got longer. Riley looked around. Tank was leaning back in his chair, his bandaged arm propped up. Petey was typing with greasy fingers. Marla had pizza sauce on her chin. The other crew members sat in comfortable silence. A feeling rose in her chest. It was strange. Soft. It took her a moment to name it. Family. She had never had this. Not really. There was her mom, and there was Slither. But a table full of people who cared about her just because? That was new. Slither uncoiled lazily. He slid between the pizza boxes and settled in the center of the table. His head swayed gently. No one screamed. No one flinched. Petey just moved his soda cup out of the way. "He's the mascot now," Tank said. The crew laughed. Slither flicked his tongue, like he approved. Grizzly cleared his throat. The room got quiet. "I have something to say," he said. He looked at Riley. His voice was low but steady. "When this is over, when the evidence is out, and we're safe, I want to make it official. I want to adopt you." Legally, Riley froze. Her heart beat hard. "You already have my name," he said. "I want to give you my future, if you want it." The room held its breath. Riley's eyes filled with tears. She nodded. Then she nodded again. Harder. "Yes," she said. "Yes." Grizzly reached across the table. She reached too. Their hands met over a half-eaten slice of pepperoni pizza. Slither curled around both their arms, a warm, patient loop. And in that little motel room with the heater humming and the world still dangerous outside, the shape of a new family was born. The pizza boxes sat stacked in the corner. The room still smelled like pepperoni and warmth. But the mood shifted when Marla pulled out her phone. "I need to make the call," she said. Grizzly nodded. "Do it." Marla set up her laptop on the table. She tapped a few keys. The screen lit up with a video call. A woman appeared. She had gray hair and sharp eyes. Her name was Diane, and she ran the news desk at a major station. "Diane," Marla said. "I have something you need to see." Diane raised an eyebrow. "You've been off the grid for 3 days." I was starting to worry. Marla turned the laptop toward Petey. He held up the flash drive. Then he played a short clip on his screen. The images showed barrels leaking dark liquid into a creek. They showed a logo on a truck. The logo belonged to Sterling Industries. Diane's face went pale. "Is that what I think it is?" "It's worse," Marla said. "There are documents, internal emails, payoffs to local officials. This goes all the way to the top." Diane leaned closer to her screen. Her voice dropped. "Marla, do you know what this is? This is the story of the decade. We can run it, but we need the full upload. Can you get it to me?" "Within 48 hours, Marla said. "I need to upload it to a secure server. Then, it goes live automatically." Diane nodded. "Do it. I'll have our legal team ready. We'll air it the moment it's confirmed." "Thank you," Marla said. "No, thank you. Stay safe. Call me when it's done." The call ended. The screen went dark. Riley let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "We did it," she said. It's really happening. Grizzly put a hand on her shoulder. Almost. We still have to upload. Petey set up the new equipment. The satellite modem blinked green. The booster hummed. He plugged in the flash drive. The upload bar appeared on his screen. 1%. 40 minutes, he said. Maybe less. Grizzly posted 2 crew members at the door, 2 more by the window. The motel got quiet again. The heater clicked on. The curtains stayed shut. That was when the phone rang. It was the motel office. Grizzly answered. A man's voice came through, rough and low. Tell Riley we found her. Tell her the snake won't save her this time. The line went dead. Grizzly's face turned hard as stone. They know where we are. Tank was already on his feet. Everyone up. Now. The crew moved fast. Petey grabbed the laptop. Marla grabbed the flash drive. Riley jumped up and reached for Slither. The door burst open. 3 men in black rushed in. Grizzly threw a punch. It landed hard on the first man's jaw. The man went down. But there were more. They came through the window, too. Glass shattered. Boots stomped on the floor. Tank grabbed a chair and swung it. It cracked against a man's shoulder. Petey tackled another. The room became a storm of fists and shouting. Riley ran for the bathroom. Slither coiled around her arm. A man grabbed her from behind. She screamed and kicked. Her foot hit his knee. He grunted, but held on. Get the girl. He shouted. The boss wants her alive. Grizzly heard the words. He shoved a man out of the way. He lunged toward Riley. He was 3 steps away. 2. Another man came out of nowhere. A heavy flashlight slammed into Grizzly's ribs. He grunted and fell to one knee. Grizzly. Riley screamed. The men dragged her toward the door. Slither lashed out. He struck one man across the face. The man yelled and let go. But another grabbed the python by the tail. Slither hissed loud. His body twisted. He couldn't break free. Slither. Riley fought. She clawed. She bit. A rough hand clamped over her mouth. They threw her out the door. A white van sat in the parking lot. The back doors were open. Riley hit the metal floor hard. Slither was thrown in beside her. The doors slammed shut. The engine roared. Grizzly made it to the door just in time to see the van peel out of the lot. Its rear lights blinked red at the edge of the driveway. Then, they vanished into the night. Riley. He shouted. The van was gone. The crew came out behind him. Blood dripped from Tank's nose. Petey limped. Marla clutched the flash drive to her chest. The motel room behind them was wrecked. Glass and wood everywhere. Grizzly stood in the empty parking lot. His chest heaved. His fists clenched. Then he walked to the wall. He punched it once. The drywall cracked. He punched it again. His knuckles split open. A third punch. The bricks bit into his skin. He leaned against the wall. His forehead touched the cool brick. He didn't move. The crew watched in silence. I just got her, he said. His voice broke on the last word. Then he pushed off the wall. He turned around. His eyes were wet, but his jaw was set. Find them, he said. His voice was low and hard. I don't care what it takes. I don't care who we have to call. I don't care who gets in our way. We bring her home. Tank stepped forward. We're with you, brother. Every step, Petey said. Marla nodded. I'll make calls. My sources can track that van. Grizzly looked at his bloody knuckles. Then he looked at the road where the van had disappeared. She's my daughter, he said, and I'm going to get her back. The night pressed down on them like a heavy blanket. Grizzly stood in the parking lot with his phone pressed to his ear. He called every contact he had: bikers, bounty hunters, old friends from the wrong side of the law. He promised money. He promised favors. He promised anything. 2 hours passed. Then 3. The call came at dawn. It was a man named Sal who ran a tow yard on the east side of Denver. Sal owed Grizzly a debt from years back. "White van," Sal said. "No plates. Dropped off at an old warehouse off Alameda. Looks abandoned. But there are men there." Armed, Grizzly's grip tightened on the phone. Address: Sal gave it to him. Grizzly hung up and turned to the crew. Maps spread across the hood of a car. Petey pulled up satellite images on his laptop. The warehouse sat alone in a lot of cracked concrete and dead weeds. A chain-link fence surrounded it. 2 trucks parked out front. Men moved in and out of a side door. 6 guards visible, Petey said. Maybe more inside. No cameras on the perimeter. But there's a floodlight on each corner. Tank studied the screen. "We need the element of surprise. We hit them at night. Dark gives us cover." Marla spoke up. "I can call the police. We have the evidence. They could raid the place." Grizzly shook his head. "If we call the cops, Sterling's people get tipped off. Half the force is on his payroll. Riley could be moved before anyone arrives. We do this ourselves." The room got quiet. "Then," Tank nodded, "then we gear up," he said. "And we go get our girl." They left within the hour. 2 trucks and a motorcycle. Grizzly rode his bike. The wind hit his face, but he didn't feel it. He only saw Riley's face. He saw her reaching for him. He saw the van's red lights disappearing. He would not lose her again. They parked a mile from the warehouse. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the empty lots. Grizzly walked ahead alone. He wanted to see the place for himself. He ducked behind a stack of old tires and peered through a gap in the fence. The warehouse rose up like a dark box against the orange sky. Weeds grew tall around its base. Rust streaked down its metal walls. The floodlights were off, but he could see men moving near the entrance. One had a rifle. Another held a radio to his mouth. Grizzly counted the guards. He mapped every door, every window, every possible path in. Then he crouched low and moved closer. He felt the pull, the need to run in right now, to kick down the door and find her. His heart pounded. His hands shook. He took another step into the open. A boot crunched on gravel. A voice called out, "Hey, who's out there?" Grizzly froze. A guard stood at the corner of the warehouse. His rifle came up. The beam of a flashlight swept across the lot. Grizzly dropped to the dirt. He pressed himself flat behind a rusted barrel. His breath came in short bursts. The flashlight swept again. It passed inches over his head. "Probably a raccoon," another voice said. "Relax," the first guard grunted. The flashlight clicked off. Boots crunched back toward the door. Grizzly stayed still. He counted to 60. Then he crawled backward on his elbows until he was behind the tires again. His heart slammed against his ribs. His palms were slick with sweat. He made his way back to the crew. Tank met him at the truck. "See anything?" Tank asked. 6 guards outside, at least 2 inside. One has a rifle. They're nervous. They almost spotted me. Petey frowned. So we wait for full dark. Grizzly looked at the sky. The sun was almost gone. A line of purple sat on the horizon. His fists clenched at his sides. He wanted to charge in now. Every second Riley was in there was a second too long. He could picture her scared and alone. He could picture Slither coiled beside her, hissing at anyone who came close. We wait. Grizzly said. His voice was tight. But not long. The moment that sun goes down, we move. The crew nodded. They checked their weapons. They checked each other's gear. They waited in the growing dark. Grizzly watched the warehouse. He watched the guards pace. He watched the floodlights flicker on as night fell. And he counted the minutes until he could get his daughter back. The air inside the warehouse was cold and damp. It smelled like oil and old metal. Riley sat in a wooden chair in the middle of the open floor. Her wrists were bound behind her back with thick rope. Her ankles were tied to the chair legs. Every time she moved, the ropes bit into her skin. A single bulb hung from a wire above her head. It swung slightly in the draft. It cast strange shadows on the concrete walls. On the far side of the room sat a metal crate. The crate had small holes punched in the side. From one of those holes, a pair of dark eyes watched her. Slither was in there. Riley could hear him shifting, a soft rustle of scales against metal, a low hiss. He was worried. She could feel it. She had raised him since he was barely longer than her arm. And now, he was locked in a box because of her. She pulled at the ropes. The fibers scraped her wrists. A small trickle of blood ran down her hand. She bit her lip and pulled harder. The chair creaked. The rope held. Not so fast, sweetheart. Riley froze. A guard stepped out of the shadows. He was a big man with a shaved head and a cold smile. He held a cup of coffee in one hand. He shook his head slowly. You keep squirming like that, you'll rub your skin raw. And the boss wants you looking pretty for the show. Riley glared at him. Where is my dad? The guard laughed. Your dad? The biker? He's out there somewhere, probably crying into his beard. He took a sip of coffee. But don't you worry. He'll come. They always do. Riley yanked at the ropes again. The guard sighed and set down his cup. He walked over and grabbed her chin. His fingers dug into her jaw. I said relax, he said. His voice was low and hard. Riley twisted her head away. Get your hands off me. The guard raised his hand to strike her, but a voice cut through the warehouse. Enough, the guard stepped back quickly. He lowered his head. Riley looked past him. A man walked out of the darkness. He wore an expensive suit. His shoes clicked on the concrete. His hair was gray at the temples. His face was smooth and cold, like a mask. He carried a leather briefcase in one hand. He stopped a few feet from Riley. He looked at her the way someone looks at a bug on a windowsill. You must be Riley, he said. His voice was smooth and calm. I'm Mr. Sterling. I believe you have something of mine. Riley lifted her chin. I don't have anything of yours. I have proof of what you did. Sterling smiled. It did not reach his eyes. The flash drive. Yes, the one you gave to that reporter. That was a copy. I need the original. Do you know why? Riley said nothing. Because a copy can be traced, he said. He set the briefcase on a nearby table and clicked it open. Inside were papers. Photos, a map of the dumping site. The original has the chain of evidence, the files that prove where the waste came from, who signed for it, who approved it. Without the original, the story collapses, your court case disappears. And you disappear with it. He closed the briefcase and turned to face her fully. So here is my offer. Your father is coming for you. He believes he can save you. But I have men outside. I have men everywhere. If he brings me the original flash drive, I will let you walk out of here. You and your snake. He nodded toward the crate. Slither hissed from inside. But if he doesn't bring it, Sterling said, his voice turning cold, I will have you killed. And I will have the snake skinned and thrown in a dumpster. Do you understand? Riley's heart pounded. Her hands shook inside the ropes. But she did not look away. She thought of her mother. She thought of the town that had been poisoned. She thought of Grizzly, the father she had only just found. She thought of Slither, the one who had never left her side. Then she did the only thing she could. She gathered the spit in her mouth. She leaned forward. And she spat at Sterling's face. The glob landed on his cheek. It slid slowly down his jaw. His eyes went wide. Then they went hard. For a moment, no one moved. Sterling reached up and wiped his cheek with the back of his hand. He looked at the spit on his fingers. Then he looked at Riley. Think about your future, he said quietly. You won't get another chance. He turned and walked away. His footsteps echoed across the concrete. The guard followed him. A heavy door slammed shut. Riley was alone again. The silence pressed in on her. The tears came before she could stop them. Hot and fast. She sobbed into her chest. Her shoulders shook. The ropes dug deeper, but she did not care. She had been so brave. And now she was alone. Scared, tied to a chair in a dark warehouse. She had no way out, no way to warn Grizzly, no way to save Slither. Slither, she whispered. Her voice cracked. From the crate came a soft hiss, low and steady. It was not a threat. It was a comfort. It said, I am still here. I am waiting. Riley squeezed her eyes shut. The tears kept falling. But under the tears, under the fear, something small flickered inside her. A tiny spark of hope. Slither hissed again. Louder this time. Longer, and Riley believed him. Chapter 19. The long night. The night was cold and still. Grizzly sat on a crate behind an abandoned truck garage. The warehouse loomed 100 yards away. Its windows were dark. Its doors were locked tight. Armed guards walked the perimeter in pairs. Their boots crunched on the gravel. Grizzly watched them. He did not blink. Beside him, Petey worked on a small laptop. The screen glowed blue against his face. He had tapped into the warehouse security feed. But the inside cameras were disconnected. They could see the outside. They could not see Riley. Anything? Grizzly asked. Petey shook his head. Nothing new. Same guard rotation. 2 out front, 2 in back, 1 inside the main floor. Grizzly rubbed his chin. His beard was rough. His eyes were tired. But his mind was sharp. There's a vent on the north side, said Marla. She had joined them an hour ago. She held a map of the building. It's too small for a man. But we can snake a camera through. Grizzly nodded. Do it. They moved quietly through the dark. The crew covered their tracks. No talking, no lights, just shadows moving like ghosts. They reached the vent. It was a metal grate high on the wall. Petey worked it loose with a screwdriver. He slid a thin camera on a wire through the opening. The wire fed into a tablet. Grizzly held his breath. The image flickered. Then it cleared. He saw Riley. She was tied to a chair in the middle of the floor. Her head hung low. Her hair covered her face. But she was alive. Her chest rose and fell. She was breathing. Grizzly's heart ached. He wanted to tear the wall down with his bare hands. He wanted to run inside and scoop her up and never let go. But he forced himself to stay calm. He moved the camera slowly. It panned the room. He saw guards at the edges. He saw tables with tools and weapons. And then he saw the crate. It was a metal box. Small holes along the side. A padlock on the front. Grizzly knew what was inside. Slither, He stared at the crate. His mind started turning. He remembered how the python had saved Riley before, how it had wrapped around a man and squeezed until he stopped fighting, how it had protected her when no one else could. A plan began to form. "Petey," he whispered, "can you open that lock from here?" Petey looked at the camera feed. He zoomed in on the padlock. "It's a standard combo lock. If I can get a signal near it, I could jam the mechanism. Pop it open remotely." Grizzly nodded. "Do it." He turned to the rest of the crew. They gathered close. Their faces were hard but hopeful. "Here's the plan," Grizzly said. "We go in at dawn. Petey pops the lock on the crate. The python gets loose. While the guards panic, we move in fast. We grab Riley. We get out." "But what about Sterling?" asked Maria. Grizzly's jaw tightened. "He's mine." The crew nodded. They had seen that look before. It meant business. The hours crawled by. The crew prepped their gear. They checked their weapons. They stretched and drank water. They waited. Grizzly sat apart from the others. He looked at the warehouse. He thought about his life. All the years he had wasted, all the mistakes he had made. But now he had a chance. A real chance to be a father. To do something right. He would not fail. As the sky began to lighten, Grizzly moved into position. He crept along the wall. He found a crack near the loading dock. It was just wide enough to slip something through. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a tiny earpiece. It was no bigger than a pea. He had used them before on jobs. They only worked within a short range. But that was enough. He slid the earpiece through the crack. It landed on the concrete floor inside. He watched it through the camera feed. It lay just a few feet from Riley's chair. He held his breath. He saw her lift her head. She saw the tiny object. Her eyes widened. Grizzly tapped his own earpiece. He whispered into the tiny microphone attached to his collar. "Riley, can you hear me?" He watched her face. She blinked. Her lips moved. Her voice came through soft and shaky. "Yeah, I hear you." Grizzly's chest swelled. "I'm coming. We're coming. Just hold on." She nodded. A tear rolled down her cheek. But she smiled. "I'm ready, Dad." The word hit him like a thunderbolt. "Dad." She called him Dad. Grizzly took a breath. He looked at the rising sun. It painted the sky pale orange and pink. "Good," he said. "Because we're about to make some noise." He turned to his crew. They were all in position. Petey had his tablet ready. The others had their weapons drawn. Grizzly raised his hand. He held it for a moment. Then he dropped it. "Go." The smoke bombs hit the warehouse floor with a loud hiss. White clouds filled the space in seconds. The guards shouted. They could not see. They could not breathe. Grizzly moved first. He burst through the loading dock door with his shoulder. The metal slammed open. He ran low and fast. His boots pounded on the concrete. The smoke stung his eyes, but he did not stop. Behind him, the crew poured in. They fanned out. They took down guards with quick, silent strikes. The element of surprise was everything. Grizzly cut through the smoke like a knife. He saw the chair. He saw Riley. Her eyes were wide. She was pulling against her ropes. He reached for her. A guard stepped out of the smoke. He had a gun in his hand. He raised it at Grizzly's chest. Time stopped. Then the crate exploded. The metal box burst open. The padlock flew across the floor. Slither came out like a river of scales. He moved faster than anything that size should move. He wrapped around the guard in one smooth motion. The guard screamed. The gun clattered to the floor. Slither squeezed. The guard went limp. He was not dead, just out cold. But he was done. Grizzly did not waste a second. He pulled a knife from his belt. He cut Riley's ropes. She fell into his arms. She was shaking. She was crying. But she was alive. "Dad," she whispered. "I got you," he said. "I got you." Slither slithered to Riley's side. He nuzzled her leg. She reached down and touched his head. "Good boy," she said. "Good boy." Grizzly grabbed her hand. "We have to move." They ran. The smoke was clearing. The guards were regrouping. But the crew was ready. They formed a wall between Riley and the attackers. They moved together like one body. Petey covered the back. Maria swung a metal pipe. The crew pushed through the chaos. They burst out the side door into the cold morning air. The escape vehicles were waiting. Engines rumbling. Headlights cutting through the dawn. Grizzly helped Riley onto a truck. Slither coiled up beside her. The python was calm now. He knew she was safe. "Stay with the crew," Grizzly said. Riley grabbed his arm. "What about you?" He looked across the lot. A black car was speeding toward the main road. Its tires kicked up dust. The boss was getting away. "I have to finish this," Grizzly said. He ran to his motorcycle, his old bike, the one he had ridden for 20 years. It roared to life under him. "What about the evidence?" Maria shouted from the truck. "It's already with the reporter," Grizzly said. "He's done." He twisted the throttle. The bike shot forward like a bullet. The black car was half a mile ahead. It swerved onto a dirt road. Grizzly followed. The bike handled the rough ground better than the car. He gained ground fast. The car swerved again. The driver was panicking. Grizzly pulled up alongside. He saw the boss through the window. Sterling, his face was pale. His eyes were wild. Grizzly yelled over the wind, "Give up, there's nowhere to go." Sterling ignored him. He slammed the gas. The car shot ahead, but the road was bad. The dirt was loose. The car fishtailed. Grizzly eased off the throttle. He watched. The car hit a patch of mud. It spun. It slid. The wheels lost traction. And then it flipped into the ditch. The car landed with a heavy thud. Dust and dirt flew into the air. The engine died. The wheels spun for a moment. Then everything went still. Grizzly parked his bike. He walked to the car. The driver's side door was dented. The window was cracked. He pulled the door open. Sterling was slumped over the steering wheel. Blood dripped from his forehead. His eyes were closed. He was breathing. He was knocked out cold. Grizzly pulled out his phone. He dialed Petey. "Got him," he said. "Send a car. The cops, too." He looked at the unconscious boss. He felt nothing. No anger, no joy, just peace. It was over. The sirens came first. Then the flashing lights. Grizzly stood by the ditch. His hands were still steady. His heart was calm. He watched the police cars roll in. They kicked up dust as they parked. Officers spilled out. They moved fast. They were ready for anything. Petey arrived right behind them. He jumped out of the truck. He pointed at the car in the ditch. "He's in there," Grizzly said. "He's alive, just knocked out." The police swarmed the car. They pulled Sterling out. He was groggy. His eyes blinked against the morning light. He looked at Grizzly. For a second, there was hate in his eyes. Then it faded. "I'll have your head for this," Sterling mumbled. Grizzly shook his head. "No, you won't." They put Sterling in the back of the squad car. His hands were cuffed. The door shut with a heavy sound. The engine hummed. The car pulled away. Grizzly watched it go. He felt something lift off his chest, something heavy, something he had carried for a long, long time. He turned to Petey. "Where is she?" "Waiting by the truck." "She's shaky, Grizzly. She needs you." Grizzly walked. His boots felt heavy on the ground. His body was tired. But his heart was full. He found Riley sitting on the edge of the truck bed. Her legs dangled over the side. Her hands were wrapped around her arms. She was shivering, even though the morning was warm. Slither was coiled beside her. His head rested on her knee. He watched her with calm, patient eyes. Grizzly stopped a few feet away. He did not say anything at first. He just looked at her. She looked up. Her eyes were red. Her cheeks were wet. She tried to smile. It came out crooked. "Hey, Dad," she said. "Hey, kid," he said. He sat down next to her. He put his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him. Her body was still shaking. "It's over," he said. "He's gone. He can't hurt you anymore." She buried her face in his jacket. It smelled like smoke and leather and sweat. But it felt like safety. "I was so scared," she whispered. "I know. I was too." She looked at him. "You were scared?" "Terrified," he said. "But I knew I had to get to you. There was no other option." Slither uncoiled. He moved slowly. He wrapped around both of them. His body was warm and heavy. He squeezed just a little, just enough to let them know he was there. Riley laughed through her tears. "He's hugging us." Grizzly chuckled. It rumbled deep in his chest. "I think he is." They sat there in the quiet. The sun rose higher. The light turned golden. The dust settled around them. Boots crunched on gravel. Marla came walking toward them. She moved fast. Her coat flapped in the breeze. She held a small recorder in her hand. Her face was bright. "It's done," she said. "The flash drive checks out. Every record, every document, every email, it's all there." Grizzly looked at her. "Sterling? Arrested, charged. The company is being raided right now. The EPA is already on site. They're finding the barrels. The contamination. Everything." Riley sat up straighter. "My mom's town?" Marla nodded. Her voice softened. "They'll clean it up. It'll take time. But it'll happen. The truth is out." Riley let out a breath. It sounded like she had been holding it for a year. She looked at her father. Her eyes shimmered. "We did it," she said. "Yeah," Grizzly said. "We did." The crew gathered around. One by one, they came. Petey stood closest. Maria leaned on her pipe. The others formed a loose circle. They were dusty and tired and bruised. But they were smiling. Petey cleared his throat. "So, is this the part where we hug?" Maria laughed. "Shut up, Petey, no. Really," he said. "I feel like this is a hug moment." Grizzly shook his head. But he was smiling. He looked at Riley. She looked at him. Then she reached out. She grabbed his hand. She pulled him into the center of the circle. "Come on, everyone," she said. "Let's do it." The crew looked at each other. Then they laughed. They stepped in. Arms went around shoulders. Leather jackets creaked. Boots shuffled in the dirt. Slither slid down from the truck. He wrapped around the outside of the group. His coils made a loose ring around everyone. Marla raised an eyebrow. "Is the snake part of this?" Riley smiled. "He's always part of this." Marla stepped in. She put her arm around Riley's shoulder. The group hugged in the middle of a dirt road. The sun was bright. The air was clean. The day was new. Grizzly held his daughter. He felt her heart beating against his chest. He felt the warmth of his crew around him. He felt the weight of the snake against his legs. For the first time in his life, he felt complete. He looked down at Riley. She looked up at him. "Welcome home, kid," he said. She smiled. It was the biggest smile he had ever seen. "Welcome home, Dad," she said. The news broke like a summer storm. It started on the local station. Then it spread. Cable news picked it up. Then the national networks. By noon, every screen in America showed the same images: barrels buried in the dirt, documents with forged signatures, emails that proved the cover-up. And the girl with the snake. Riley's face was everywhere. The clubhouse television was old. The picture flickered. But the sound was clear. The crew sat in a loose circle. They watched in silence. Slither lay coiled on the floor. His head was raised. He watched the screen like he understood. A reporter stood outside the courthouse. Her voice was bright. "The Sterling Corporation is under federal investigation tonight. CEO Marcus Sterling faces charges of illegal toxic waste dumping, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping." The evidence was brought forward by a 17-year-old girl and a group of bikers. Petey let out a low whistle. "We're famous." Maria shook her head. "We're in trouble." Grizzly smiled. "The good kind." The phone rang. Then it rang again. Then it did not stop. Reporters called. Neighbors called. The governor's office called. They wanted statements. They wanted interviews. They wanted the story. Riley sat on the couch. She held a mug of hot chocolate. Her hands were steady now. She watched the screen. Her eyes were wide. "They're talking about me," she said. "Yeah," Grizzly said. "They are." She looked at him. "Is this real?" He sat down beside her. He put his hand on her shoulder. "It's real, kid. You did this. You changed things." The community rallied. People came to the clubhouse. They brought food. They brought flowers. They brought signs that said "Thank you" and "Justice for our town." The parking lot filled with cars. The fence line filled with faces. A woman with gray hair hugged Riley. She cried. She said her grandson had asthma. She said the air was cleaner now. She said thank you. Riley did not know what to say. So she just hugged her back. Slither became a sensation. His picture was on every news site. People called him a hero. They called him a guardian. They called him the most famous snake in America. A zoo called. They wanted to study him. Riley said no. "He's family," she said. "He stays with me." The governor announced an investigation. He stood at a podium. His voice was serious. "We will not rest until every barrel is removed, every family is compensated, every person responsible is held accountable." The crew cheered. Riley clapped. Grizzly nodded. The days passed. The dust settled. But the story did not fade. It grew. It became a symbol. A girl. A snake. A group of bikers. A town that fought back. And then the call came. The governor wanted a press conference. He wanted Riley to speak. He wanted Grizzly to stand beside her. He wanted the whole world to see the faces behind the story. Riley was nervous. She paced the clubhouse floor. Her boots tapped against the wood. "I can't do this," she said. "I'm not good at talking." Grizzly stood in front of her. He put his hands on her shoulders. He looked into her eyes. "You don't have to be good at it," he said. "You just have to be honest. Tell them what happened. Tell them why you did it. The rest will take care of itself." She took a deep breath. "Will you be there?" "Right next to you. The whole time." She nodded. "Okay, let's do it." The press conference was held in a big room. Cameras lined the back wall. Microphones crowded the podium. The governor stood to the side. He smiled. He looked proud. Riley walked to the podium. Grizzly walked beside her. He stood just behind her. close enough to catch her if she fell. She looked out at the crowd. There were so many faces, so many eyes. Her hands shook. She gripped the edge of the podium. Then she thought of her mother. She thought of the town. She thought of the barrels in the dirt. She thought of the night she ran. The night she almost died. She took a breath. "My name is Riley," she said. Her voice was small, but it grew. "A year ago, my mom died. She got sick from the water that company poisoned. I watched her fade. I watched her go. And I promised her I would make it right." The room was silent. Every camera was on her. I was alone. I had no one, except for Slither. He's my snake. He saved my life. More than once. She paused. She looked at Grizzly. He nodded. "Then I found him," she said. "I found my dad. I didn't know I had a dad. But he showed up. He saved me. He believed in me. He gave me a family." Her voice cracked. But she kept going. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a girl who wanted the truth. And I got it. Because of him. Because of all of them." She turned to Grizzly. Her eyes were wet. "Thank you, Dad, for saving me. For staying. For giving me a home." Grizzly stepped forward. He put his arm around her. He looked at the crowd. His voice was rough, but it was steady. "I spent a lot of years running from things," he said. "I thought I didn't deserve a family. I thought I was too far gone. But this girl, she changed that. She gave me a reason to live. She gave me a reason to be better." He looked down at Riley. She looked up at him. "I'm the one who should be thanking her," he said. They both smiled. The crowd erupted. Cheers filled the room. Cameras flashed. People clapped. Some cried. Riley leaned into her father. He held her tight. And for a moment, the whole world felt like home. The courthouse was smaller than Riley expected. But it felt important. The walls were tall. The benches were wooden and polished. A flag stood in the corner. It hung still in the quiet air. Riley wore a clean dress. It was blue. She had never owned a dress before. Grizzly had bought it for her. He wore a clean shirt too. No leather, no patches. He looked strange without them. But he smiled. That made it okay. The judge was an older woman. She had kind eyes. She looked at Riley first, then she looked at Grizzly. "This is a big step," the judge said. "Adoption is about family. It's about commitment. It's about love. Are you both ready for that?" Grizzly nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Riley nodded too. Yes, the judge signed the papers. She stamped them with a heavy seal. Then she smiled. "Congratulations, Mr. Malone. Congratulations, Riley. You are now legally father and daughter." Riley felt something break open inside her. It was not a sad break. It was a happy one. She turned to Grizzly. He was already looking at her. His eyes were wet. "Hey, kid," he said. "Hey, Dad," she said. They hugged. The courtroom clapped. Even the bailiff clapped. It was a good moment. The house was small. It sat at the edge of town. It had white siding and a red door. The porch was wide. The yard was green. And the garage was perfect. Grizzly walked through the rooms. He touched the walls. He opened the windows. He let the air in. "It's not much," he said. "It's ours," Riley said. They moved in that weekend. The crew came to help. Petey carried boxes. Maria hung curtains. The big guys moved the couch. They laughed. They joked. They made it feel like home. Slither explored his new room. It was the biggest room in the house. Grizzly insisted. He built a custom platform for the python to bask on. He installed heat lamps. He hung vines from the ceiling. "Every king needs a castle," Grizzly said. Riley laughed. "He's a snake, not a king. He's family." Grizzly said. Family gets the best room. So they painted a sign for the door. It said Slither's room in big letters. Slither curled up on his platform. He looked content. He looked home. The crew came by often. They became uncles. Petey taught Riley how to fix a motorcycle engine. Frank taught her how to fish. Big Mike taught her how to cook on a grill. She learned a little from each of them. She laughed a lot with all of them. They showed up on Sundays. They brought food. They brought stories. They sat on the porch. They told old tales. They told new ones. Riley listened. She laughed. She felt safe. One evening the crew left. The sun was setting. The sky turned orange and pink. The clouds looked like cotton candy. The air was warm and still. Grizzly sat on the porch steps. Riley sat beside him. Slither was inside. He was asleep in his room. They watched the sun dip lower. It painted the sky in gold. The birds sang their last songs. The world felt quiet and peaceful. Riley leaned her head on Grizzly's shoulder. She let out a long breath. I always dreamed of a father, she said. Grizzly smiled. He looked down at her. Did you? Yeah, I used to imagine him. I didn't know what he looked like. I just knew I wanted one. And now? She looked up at him. Now I've got you. He chuckled. It was a warm sound. I always dreamed of a daughter. Didn't think she'd be tougher than me. Riley laughed. I'm not tougher than you. You stared down a python. You fought off bad guys. You took on a whole corporation. I've seen grown men crumble under less. She smiled. I had help. Yeah, he said. You had Slither. They both laughed. The sound floated into the twilight. She hugged him. It was a real hug, the kind that says everything without words. He wrapped his arms around her. He held her tight. He held her like he would never let go. I'm glad you found me, she whispered. I'm glad you let me, he said. The sun disappeared. The stars came out. They sat together. Father and daughter. Two people who were strangers before. Now they were family. The porch light turned on. The door behind them opened. Slither poked his head out. He looked at them. Then he slithered out. He coiled beside Riley. He was part of the family too. Grizzly looked at them. His girl, her snake, his home. This is good, he said. Yeah, Riley said. This is really good. They stayed on the porch a little longer. The night wrapped around them. It felt like a blanket. It felt like a promise. It felt like the beginning of something beautiful. The morning was bright. The sun climbed high over the Colorado hills. The sky was clear. It was the kind of blue that made you want to take a deep breath. Grizzly stood in the driveway. He wore his leather vest again. His patches were back. But something was different. He stood taller. He smiled more. The hard lines on his face had softened. Riley walked out of the house. She wore a leather jacket. It was new. Grizzly had given it to her. It had her own patches on it. One said Riley, another said Malone. She ran her hand over it. Is it too big? She asked. It's perfect, Grizzly said. You'll grow into it. She laughed. I'm 17. I'm not growing anymore. You'll grow. Trust me. The crew gathered in the street. Petey was there. Frank was there. Big Mike was there. Maria was there. All the guys were there. Their bikes gleamed in the morning light. They revved their engines. The sound filled the air. Slither waited by the garage. He was coiled near a custom sidecar. It was built just for him. It had a glass dome. It had a soft bed inside. It had vents for fresh air. Grizzly built it himself. It took him 3 weeks. He was proud of it. "Come on, big guy," Grizzly said. "Time for a ride." Slither slithered into the sidecar. He curled up on the soft bed. He raised his head high. He looked like a king on a throne. Riley smiled. "He loves it." "Of course he does. It's the best seat in the house." Grizzly swung onto his motorcycle. It was a big bike, black and chrome. It gleamed in the sun. Riley climbed on behind him. She wrapped her arms around his waist. "You ready?" he asked. "I was born ready. That's my girl." He kicked the engine. It roared to life. The crew revved theirs in response. A dozen engines. A dozen bikers. One family. They rolled out of the driveway. The house shrank behind them. The red door looked warm in the morning light. The porch looked peaceful. But they were heading somewhere else now. They cruised down the main road. The wind whipped past. Riley closed her eyes. She felt the speed. She felt the freedom. She felt her father's back under her hands. It was solid. It was safe. The crew spread out behind them. They rode in formation, 2 by 2. Slither rode in the sidecar. His head was raised high. His scales caught the sunlight. He looked majestic. They turned onto the highway. The same highway. The one where it all began. Riley recognized it. The curves. The hills. The long, straight stretches. "This is it," she shouted over the wind. "This is where you found me." Grizzly nodded. He didn't say anything. But she felt him squeeze her hand. They passed the spot. The exact spot. Riley looked at the side of the road. She remembered lying there. She remembered the fear. She remembered the python wrapping around her. She remembered the sound of the engines coming. She remembered thinking she was alone. She was wrong. The crew rode behind them. The sound of their engines was like music. It was a song of belonging, a song of family. They rode for an hour. The wind was cool. The sun was warm. The mountains rose ahead of them. They were big. They were blue. They stretched into the sky like giants. Grizzly pulled off at a scenic overlook. The crew followed. They parked their bikes in a neat row. The engines quieted. The silence felt good. They got off their bikes. Riley stretched. Slither poked his head out of the sidecar. He looked around. He seemed pleased. Grizzly walked to the edge of the overlook. He looked at the mountains. They stretched ahead, green and brown and gray. Snow capped the tallest peaks. The sky went on forever. Riley stood beside him. She didn't say anything. She just stood there. A few berries by her side. The crew hung back. They gave them space. They knew this was a special moment. Grizzly looked at Riley. Then he looked at Slither. The python had crawled out of the sidecar. He wrapped himself around Riley's shoulders. His head rested near her ear. Grizzly smiled. "This is where our story started," he said. "Right down there on that highway. I was a lost man. I didn't know what I needed. I thought I was just riding home from a funeral." Riley listened. And then I saw a girl on the ground. A girl with a snake. A girl fighting for her life. And something woke up in me. Something I thought was dead. He paused. He looked at her. His eyes were soft. And now here we are. Standing on a mountain. Watching the sun. You're my daughter. I'm your father. And that snake is still wrapped around your neck like he owns you. Riley laughed. He does own me. Good, that means I do too. She leaned into him. He put his arm around her. It's not the end, he said. It's just the beginning. The mountains stretched ahead. The road wound through them. It was a long road. It curved and climbed. It disappeared into the distance. Grizzly looked at it. Ready for the next adventure? Riley smiled. Always, they walked back to the bike. Slither slid back into his sidecar. He curled up. He raised his head. He looked forward. Grizzly and Riley got on. The crew mounted their bikes. Engines roared to life. The sound filled the valley. It echoed off the mountains. Grizzly looked back at his daughter. She nodded. He twisted the throttle. They rode off into the horizon. The crew followed behind them, a family on wheels. A girl, her father, and a python. Free, hopeful, together, the road ahead was long. But that was okay. They had each other. And that was everything. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.